you're saying, okay, this is a part of life. This is a part of our life, and we love our life, warts and all. And sometimes those transitions feel easy, and sometimes they feel a little bit more difficult. But I think one of the most key factors in that is making sure that you and your partner are regularly communicating, that you're on the same page, where you're having these conversations about money on the regular. So when those transitions or those challenges or the unexpected comes up, it might be one of those things where, you're happy in California, and then all of a sudden an opportunity shows up and you're like, well, we got to move to Florida. And maybe that wasn't on your radar. But when all of those things come up, if you've been regularly communicating around money and have had that openness, that transparency, that financial intimacy with your partner, that's going to make those conversations, those unexpected things, those transitions, a piece of cake in comparison to not have built that financial intimacy with those communications. Because that
really- so good. Welcome to the Build to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. We believe the key to scaling and compounding your wealth in life starts every single day with a mindset and practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal is to help you scale and compound your wealth in life so you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. My name is Brett Swartz. Every episode, we're joined by the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, or billionaires, and they share their secrets, insights, and wisdom with us so we can all level up and make a bigger impact. I'm excited about our next guest. She's the Chief Financial Wellness Advisor at Beyond Finance, where she develops real-world solutions to help people improve their financial health and relationship with money. She's helped establish the National Financial Practice Week to advance the field of financial wellness and highlight its importance. And she serves as the financial review board for Investorpedia, The Balance, Very Well Family, and Very Well Parents, and has been featured in outlets such as Mind, Body, Green, CNN, and Forbes, and so much more. She holds a PhD in personal financial planning. Please welcome to the show with me, Dr. Erika Rasure. Dr. Erika, how are we doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Excellent. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us just a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah. So right now I serve as the Chief Financial Wellness Advisor for Beyond Finance. And, I am a financial therapist at heart. So my history starts, really with the idea that I wanted to be an estate planning attorney, realized that I loved the people more than law, and really found my way to helping people navigate their emotions when it comes to their money. Because as most of us have come to learn, money is often more emotional than numbers based.
Beautiful. Really well said. Thank you so much for that. By the way, if you want to learn more about Dr. Erika, you can go to beyondfinance.com, beyondfinance.com. So let's dive right in to just that. What's the number one secret, I guess, to becoming financially, either emotionally intelligent, or how would you say that? And we can just dive right in.
I think the number one secret is coming to terms with this idea that you're not alone. I think there's so much pressure on people in general to feel like they have to know everything about money all at once. And I think it really prevents people from taking a deep dive into their own financial destiny, because there is so much shame associated with thinking that you should know more than what you do. And if you don't, it kind of keeps you away from it.
So you're not alone, and there's folks like yourself and teams and processes to help. What do you think holds people back from reaching out to get help?
I think it really does come down to that shame aspect. When we think about guilt and shame, I think that's where we have to start that conversation. Guilt is, oh, I feel bad that I made this mistake, or I feel bad that I did XYZ and have now ended up in debt. Whereas shame is, I am bad. And when people are really grappling with this idea that, wow, I ended up in debt for no matter what reason it is, and what I have found over the years is debt doesn't discriminate. You could be making 6-7 figures and your balance sheet could look really, really scary because of lifestyle creep, or you had a major medical illness or something along those lines. And so we're all one big event away from debt, but there's a shame that really prevents people from reaching out, because we don't talk about money. I mean, it's getting better, I think, but we're getting a little bit more comfortable talking about money. But when we're talking about these financial conditions of debt, there's good ones and there's quote unquote bad ones. There's a lot of moral judgment when it comes to our debt, right? Or our financial situation. And so debt is really considered kind of this bad thing. And so if we won't talk about money when it's good, or reach out for help when it's good, how are we expected to reach out for help when it's bad?
Yeah, I feel like I couldn't agree more. And I feel like it seems like a lot of the conversation is about investing and strategy and allocations, and very, very tactical things, right? But you're right. Let's say 80% of all financial decisions are emotional, right? And that's below the surface. So if you're speaking to the entrepreneur or the business owner that has been very successful and yet has not or is not great with when the distress comes or the debt comes or the challenges, things come. So is the first step just being aware that it's okay, and it's okay if you're feeling these things, let's work through them. That's kind of the first step? Or walk us through how you help high performing individuals and families work through these kind of things.
Absolutely. So it's about that awareness. I mean, you hit it on the head there. It is about bringing some consciousness to the idea that, I can be doing everything right over there, and maybe things don't look so right over there. Both things can be true at the same time with so many things in life. But what we tend to do as humans, as a lot of us know, as we kind of like put the ostrich head in the sand, and we ignore the things that are bringing us emotional pressure. And that's where debt and not feeling like we're on top of managing our debt can feel like we are under a lot of stress, a lot of strain, a lot of anxiety. And of course, that,
Yeah.
transfers into the way we feel about ourselves, our relationships, and even our physical health. That's where we get our, no sleep nights, or our headaches, or our tummy aches, and the things that really bleed into every other aspect. So if you're not dealing with the things that are keeping you up at night, or the things that create a somatic or physical reaction in your body, that's a good cue to start noticing those patterns and bring that awareness to them so you can start healing them.
Okay, this is so good, and I think it's timely too. So, my wife and I are married nearly 17 years, got 5 kids.
Yes.
Yeah, business dynamics change. We moved from 3 years ago from California to Florida, and even the way that we do our collections, has shifted. And it's and there's the dynamic changes of what kids are what they call them ICUs, income consuming units, right? They're expensive, right? And jujitsu, and they got the soccer, and then they have the healthcare, all that stuff. So just the shifts and the waves. So talk about how you help families when it's dynamically changing. Sometimes it feels like it's so fast, right? And you're like, huh. My personal thing is, I went from, and this may or may not be healthy, but just full transparency. I went from okay, Dave Ramsey, this is the beginning, and we did really well for those first couple of years, and then we did really well. We lived lower means, all these things. The kids started coming, the lifestyle starts changing, right, and things start moving fast. And I went from okay, instead of focusing like a laser on the expenses and the budgets, to well, how do I just double my income every single year? At least shoot for that, right? And then there's no way we can all outspend this. We're not that. Are we that? So it's just one extreme versus maybe the more extreme, but help through the mindset of the dynamic change and how to work through that.
Yeah, and I laugh because I've got 4 kids myself, and I think about the dynamic of, oh my gosh, all of a sudden it's like nothing, and then it's everything. And a lot of us, especially as parents, and these family units, sometimes it's just we're trying to survive every day, right? And when we're trying to figure all this out and integrate how we are not only using our money, but using our time and our resources and our love, all of that stuff can really bubble to the surface, especially in those times of transition. And I think one of the biggest things we can come to terms with, if you will, or just allow and integrate, is this idea that, hey, life is full of transitions. There's no running away from it. So let's try to lean into it. And the more you're willing to lean into it, the better your outcome is going to be, because you're not hiding from it. You're not pushing it to the side. You're saying, okay, this is a part of life. This is a part of our life, and we love our life, warts and all. And sometimes those transitions feel easy, and sometimes they feel a little bit more difficult. But I think one of the most key factors in that is making sure that you and your partner are regularly communicating, that you're on the same page, where you're having these conversations about money on the regular. So when those transitions or those challenges or the unexpected comes up, it might be one of those things where, you're happy in California, and then all of a sudden an opportunity shows up, and you're like, we got to move to Florida. And maybe that wasn't on your radar. But when all of those things come up, if you've been regularly communicating around money, and have had that openness, that transparency, that financial intimacy with your partner, that's going to make those conversations, those unexpected things, those transitions, a piece of cake in comparison to not have built that financial intimacy with those communications. Because
This is so good.
that really comes down to safety in our relationships, right?
Yes. This is so good. Dr. Erika, and I'm going to spell the last name. It's pronounced Rasure, but you may not connect it, the spelling, Rasure. And you can find and learn more about what she's doing at beyondfinance.com, which we're going to dive into a little more practical stuff here now. So what you're offering and what you help people through is what you've been talking about, but let's dive in a little more. So the smart way to move beyond debt. So what do you mean by that? And let's unpack that for the listeners that are listening today.
All right. So the first thing, when we're thinking about moving beyond debt, we're thinking about the smart things we can do. The first thing, like I already mentioned, is bringing awareness to what is bugging you emotionally. We can see what's going on our, balance sheets. We know what's going on there. But when you're not open to the idea of dealing with it emotionally, that's just going to kind of stunt your ability to grow forward. And so getting in touch with, okay, this is bothering me. This is the specific thing. Maybe it is that you are in a pattern of overspending, whatever that looks like to you. And maybe you can afford it too, but maybe it's gotten to that point where you don't feel like that is something that is in line with your values. That is where we need to start pivoting and redefining values. And I do a lot of values work in my work to help people understand where they are in alignment with their values, whether that's individual or family or relationship values, but really their financial values, to help make sure that they can operate in a position that influences their financial choices and actions in a way that ultimately feels good for them and doesn't feel outside of their body. It feels inside their body and, connected. And so making sure that your values are clear, you can define them, and you can start pivoting your choices around your values. And so if, let's say, for example, your primary financial value is stability. The way I define stability, Brett, is going to look different than the way you define it. But if you're noticing you're in a pattern of overspending, again, whether you can afford it or not, and it doesn't feel good in your body, you can come back to that value of stability and say, if I make this purchase, if I do this, is this going to make me feel good? And if the answer is no, then you know right away that is not in alignment with your values. And it makes it feel more like an objective and logical decision than an emotional one. Because sometimes, it's not unusual that people have a hard time with emotions. I think emotional literacy, for some people it comes really naturally, I think just like any skill. But for a lot of people it needs to be learned. And that values work, I think, is a nice gateway into learning how to connect with the way things feel. And then you can make choices from there, whether that is, deciding maybe to work with a company like Beyond Finance, where, we work with, debt consolidation and getting you back on the right track with those kinds of things. That's certainly one way to do it. But there's other ways, before you get to that point where you can say, okay, I just need to think about this and bring awareness to the patterns that you've got.
Okay, got it. So that makes sense. Bring awareness, right? And then clearly define your financial values. Mm-hmm. And then being aware that when you're making these decisions, if the emotions align in a positive way with those values or not. Mm-hmm. And if not, that should hopefully be a red light, right? And slow down and start to not, I guess, let the values propel your decisions versus the emotions. Yeah. Is that a fair summary?
I think that is a very fair summary. Because you have to sometimes work with your emotions in a way that feels more stable. And I think that's where that values work comes in, is it helps you really lessen that idea of shame, because like I said, it's, shame is I am bad. And so if you're going to make a decision to spend, instead of leading from the, oh, I am bad, I shouldn't be doing this, versus, oh, is this in alignment with my value? It becomes so much more objective, and it makes you feel stronger, smarter, more powerful, and confident today.
Yeah, there's a song that's, I think, it's number one in the world now. It's called "Till You Can't," right? And I think about like my kids, and youngest is 7, oldest is 15. It's like, and making these memories, making these experiences, doing the stuff until you can't, right? The idea until they're too old or they're gone somewhere else, and the other side of it too is like, well, there's got to be a balance there, right? Where you're being prudent and these different things. I had another mentor tell me, like, our goals should be next year to be the happiest, most healthy, year of our lives. And so you're balancing these values, these the vision for the family, these experiences. And I think that's where you're right. You got to have even diving in, I imagine you do this as well, but like, what's the clear family mission, vision, values? What's the family mission value? What's the marriage mission, vision, value? What's your personal mission statement? What's looking back in 5 or 10 or 20, 30 years, the perfect life metrics, financially for you and your family? If everything went perfectly, what would that look like? In 2 weeks, my wife and I and our kids were going to go to New Zealand. Right? It's our big once-a-year trip. Last year, we went to Uganda for like a missions trip, which was great. This year's more like the fun trip, but next year we plan on going back to Uganda and experiencing the ability to travel and explore the world together is key. And I look at it and part of me goes, Dr. Erika, like, I mean, if I need to work till the whole 65 thing, I think is kind of, let's just say overrated. Like, you're going to retire at 65, like, I'll work till 70. I mean, hopefully AI doesn't take over everything, but that's kind of like, just keep going. But I know there's probably different boundaries and proper ways to do it, blind spots you want to make sure you're looking out for. So what are, maybe for the hard charging entrepreneur, business owner who's listening, person maybe who's got, multiple millions of dollars per se, right? What are some of the key blind spots or the wisdom pieces that you want to share with them?
I love what you just said here. I think the biggest blind spot is ignoring what's happening in the present. And I think I don't want to necessarily call it hustle culture. I think there's so many of us out there that are motivated and we have drive. And you said it yourself, maybe I retire at 65, maybe I don't. And I think that's all a personal, values-based system, and it's what feels good to you. But let's not delay what feels good, you know, just because we feel like we have to, because we feel like we have to keep up, or comparison traps exist in everything. And I really do think it comes down to that balance of what's going on in the present. What are you doing today that feels good? Like you are, let's have the happiest, healthiest year in 2026. Awesome, great. Why can't we do that today? And I think there's this constant reach to strive and strive and strive. And for highly motivated people who haven't quite learned yet that you do have the power to, say no, to set boundaries. I think doing those things in the present is so much more powerful than waiting and waiting to do it at a different time because you have XYZ metric to meet, or you want this goal, or whatever that looks like. It's settling into the moment, being grounded and aligned with who you are now, in honor of who you are going to be. Our future self, I really do believe, thanks us for finding the balance in now and really leaning into what love looks like, both in our work, in our passions, but in our family, our friends, our relationships. That's the biggest blind spot I've ever seen. Is just that's what I see.
It's so good. By the way, this is so good. You know what's really interesting? They did a study, and they continue to do this study across the world of people on their deathbeds, like towards the end of their life, and they ask them some key questions. And one of the questions is like, what is maybe the top regret that you have if you're looking back? And they're like, you've got a short time to live. And they think about it and they go, and this is across every culture around the world, it's basically the same 5. But the number one from what we've studied is not having the courage to live authentically instead of meeting others' expectations. And I think that's exactly what you just said there, right? Like, you got to really get clear on like why you're doing what you're doing, and what is it about where you're at that you're not already living the healthiest, happiest year of your life, and that it's something that's out there that you're moving towards. Now, is that something that's coming from your core value and where you're at and where you feel, for me, it would be my faith, like God calling me towards, that part of where I'm going. And then, or is it because of the external, chasing the Joneses or chasing whatever, that piece of it? And it's important where your heart's at, right? And where your emotions are at. And the worst would be, by the way, guess what number 2 is, Dr. Erika, on the deathbed? Working too much and neglecting relationships, right? And this is, and you could say that, Americans probably, struggle more with what you just said, right? And not getting clear, getting intentional, slowing down enough to plan out these things and reflect in an emotionally intelligent way to make adjustments. Is that a fair summary? What would you add to that?
I think that's a very fair summary. And what I think is also interesting too, I think the higher income you become, I also think there's this higher risk of wanting to build more wealth. And I think that's a great thing. I do. Like, build, do what you need to do. But sometimes we sacrifice, our relationships and our ability to go to our kids' games, or, be present with our families and anchor into those moments, because we're on to the next big thing. And when you have the money to do that, when you have the capital available to continue to build like that type of generational wealth, that can be very hard to resist. And it's just so important to know that, right at the end of the day, you're not going to be, thanking your financial advisor for all of the wonderful things they did to support you, or your CPA, on your deathbed. You're going to be thanking your children for the love and care and support that they've given you, and the lessons you have imparted. All of that is what matters at the end.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. This is so good, and I want to shift a little bit, or just continue the conversation a little bit on a practical way of cash flow. The whole idea of passive cash flow. I know the Rich Dad Poor Dad, fourth quadrant. This thing that's, it feels like it's like a unicorn for most people. Like, actually, I've gone so far to say that especially you're owning real estate, like it's never passive. Even if you have a manager, even if you have that, so truly passive income is what I find that a lot of us really desire. And I define it a couple things, right? As a word picture, like you're Kenny Chesney on the beach playing your guitar. You got your hat on, you got your drink, feet in the sand, water, okay? But you're in an emotionally, abundant state. You have certainty of conviction that whether it be 30, 40, 50, 60,000, whatever the number is per month, the number is your number based upon your lifestyle and your what you're doing. And also maybe you would be able to give more, but it's coming in, it's consistent, it's durable, but you're not trading any of your time, stress, energy for that. And it's consistent and it's durable. And I believe that truly passive income is to your freedom and impact as compounding interest is to your money. And too often, Dr. Erika, I feel that most people are focusing on just how do I just compound, what I have, and like you said, just keep building for the sake of building, versus like, well, wait, how do I unlock truly passive income? Because that's really the compounding effect for the things that and be able to give more to your family, right? With your presence, with your time, obviously, with your energy and focus towards building family mission, vision, values, for the multi-generational, transfer of true wealth, or more than just the financial piece of the wealth, but the emotional wealth, the relational wealth, the entrepreneurial wealth, the spiritual wealth, right? Your faith wealth, and of course the money part of it too. But yeah, what do you think about that? How does that truly passive income sound in your world?
I would say your definition and mine are very similar in terms of how passive income feels, the level of personal engagement you have in it, and you're right. I think, there is so much effort, in this constant idea of building, but where's the intention in what we're building? Are we intentionally building more passively or actively? And when you can, start to be, and I think this is the benefit of having, wealth and building wealth, is you get to a point where you do have discernment in where you put your time, your money, and your effort. But I think sometimes there's no intention behind the discernment. And I also think there's no awareness that the discernment exists, that you have options. Because a lot of us, even if we are millionaires or the big B's, whatever we are, is that so many of us still anchor into what we were. And we're still trying to prove to our parents or our school or our church or whatever that is, that we are worthy, right? And so sometimes that worthiness gets wrapped up in these external definitions of what looks important to somebody else. And so our discernment, we don't become aware of it, or we easily dismiss it. And then we start pursuing additional wealth building activities that aren't passive but are more actively involved, which then of course I think has serious consequences potentially down the road for what we're modeling for everyone around us.
This is so good. Dr. Erika Rasure, everybody. You can learn more by going to beyondfinance.com, beyondfinance.com. Yeah, 3 words come to mind. Identity, control, and trust. Mm-hmm. And the more that it's into, it's just called the world and things that are temporary. Maybe generally speaking, you're going to be less internally, right? And things that are eternal and internal into you, it's going to be disconnected, right? And so I think that's so key. And on that, okay, we're doing pretty good on time. So maybe a couple more little points here. So back to what you guys are doing. So beyondfinance.com. So you're going to help people obviously work through these things, get maybe clear on their financial goals and values, and then get a plan in place to ultimately, is it be debt free, or to be smart with debt, or like what is kind of the, the thing that you're delivering, and how does it all work to work with you guys?
Sure. So let's imagine a scenario where, it's you and you've got 5 kids and you are coming out of a season in your life where your wife has just beat breast cancer and you are finding yourself $200,000 in credit card debt because you were trying to float your life and make sure your wife didn't die. There's all of those things there. So think about that scenario to where somebody is we're on the other side of this major life event, but now we've got this big financial catastrophe. And so, a lot of people, they'll try, trying to pay it off themselves. They'll try negotiating, directly with the credit card companies. Sometimes there's success with that, sometimes there's not. But what we do is we kind of serve as an intermediary between that to try and help clients who are in a tremendous amount of debt, or an amount of debt that feels very overwhelming to them, help manage that relationship with their creditors so they can find peace on the other side of that. And in addition to that, we offer a tremendous amount of financial wellness resources that anybody can access, that can help kind of set the tone for, okay, this is something I'm working with, whether I'm in debt or not, or am I at this point yet? To help bring some clarity. I think that clarity is key. And I think that's one thing Beyond Finance really excels at, is helping clients find that clarity in what they're going to do with their debt.
Boom. That was excellent. I'm really clear on that. Okay. Got it. And then once they do that, like then where do you go? So they go, okay, we're through that now. We're on the other side of it. We look up, we got out of this big event. Then what's the next step, Erika?
Yeah. So, the next step I think with debt is realizing what happened, to get you in the debt in the first place. Like I said, a lot of the people I've met, I've been doing this type of work for 21 years. A lot of the people I've met, their financial condition of debt is because they have had some sort of major life catastrophe that precipitated it. So job loss, death, divorce. Maybe they were scammed. That is such a big thing right now. There's love scams, investment scams, work scams, all these things. And people find themselves in these really precarious positions for things that are largely out of their control. And so for those folks, it's a little bit easier to say, okay, this wasn't all me. And I think that's something that people really do carry, because there is such a stigma around debt that for years it didn't matter how you got into the debt. The fact of the matter was that you are in debt, and because you are in debt, you are bad, and the debt is bad, and everything is bad. And I think for a lot of people, and hopefully maybe this resonates with somebody who's listening today, is if you found yourself in a major debt situation because of things that were out of your control, like cancer or death of a partner, let that weight go. Let it, just set it off your shoulders, put it on the ground, and let's find a different solution here. It's not all you. You do not have to carry all of that baggage by yourself. And I think that's something Beyond really excels at. Now, there are other situations where you might be a classic overspender. Maybe you're dealing with the lifestyle creep, and maybe you are quote unquote guilty of trying to keep up with the Joneses, and you bought, a Jaguar when you probably should have bought, an Acura, whatever that looks like, right? Because you weren't acting in a place of your values. And so that kind of work is key here, to make sure that you are observing the patterns of what got you into the position you're in. And sometimes that's completely absolvable. Sometimes it's partially absolvable, but sometimes it's all you. And it's not about deflecting accountability, but it's about accepting accountability, but assigning it accordingly.
Gosh, so much wisdom right there. Okay, we're going to do the lightning round in 1 minute. I want to be practical too with some folks. Part of what we do, Dr. Erika, is we build capital gains tax exit plans to deliver that truly passive income. But what gets missed a lot of times is certain other plans require you to stay in debt. And in fact, we're seeing a lot of the multifamily owners, real estate owners, commercial real estate owners who bought 3.5 years ago where interest rates were all-time lows. And it's hard to anticipate, but interest rates more than doubled. And now, because they did these 1031s, or because they bought when they felt they were forced to have to buy in order to defer capital gains tax using a 1031 exchange, they end up buying, and now the whole ship is sinking, not because they made a poor investment decision on the actual intrinsic real estate value and the location and the rents and different things, but because the debt, mainly 90% of it, has more than doubled and they didn't anticipate it. And and now it's just sinking the entire ship and they're losing all of their wealth. And it breaks my heart because in 2008, a similar thing happened. And when I was at helping people sell real estate in Sacramento, California, the same thing happened. And so I think having a mindset of debt flow, tax flow, and cash flow is the proper way to do it. Most folks just focus on cash flow, but they don't see in 3D. And so it's avoidable. Like you can actually sell and defer tax and get out of debt. We have a strategy that does that, and that it allows you to do all three and not have to be forced to do a 1031. And if people want to learn more, go to capitalgainstaxreach.com. But it works for Bitcoin, businesses, real estate, and you never have to be in debt ever again and have to replace this debt, this ever-ending 1031, replace the debt cycle, which generally keeps you in the same active cycle, right? And you're like, well, what do you really want here? And I just think a lot of the real estate world, and I'm a part of it, I grew up in it, and I love real estate, for those that have been sold that this is the way that you must do it, but it just costs people maybe all of their wealth if they over leverage. So I don't know. I'm not sure if you've studied the 1031 exchange or know about that, but if you did, I'm just curious, have you seen some of those similar challenges with the 1031?
I have. And what's interesting is I own real estate as well, and I think anybody who's looking at their overall financial picture and is feeling overwhelmed by it or emotionally torn, like and I like what you said, it's the idea of the sinking of the ship, and it doesn't feel right, and you feel like you're going to end up with this giant torpedo in your finances. And I think that's why it's so important to have a good team, because there's so many different kinds of debt, right? We've got our consumer debt, we've got our massive debt that comes from kind of leveraging things. And so it's so important to make sure that you've got you've got a Brett on your team, you've got somebody with that expertise who can say, okay, I can not only help you with this financially, but I know that there's also a huge emotional lift. And it sounds like, Brett, you are well aware of that emotional lift, because sometimes people are willing to go down with that sinking ship, and it's unnecessary.
Absolutely. If you want to learn more, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, and let's dive into the lightning round. Dr. Erika, first question. Number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I have an answer for this. I would say one of the books I recommend quite often is The Psychology of Wealth by Morgan Housel.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Love it. Question number two. What are you most curious about right now?
I am so curious, to be honest, about is AI everything. I am on such an AI kick of learning, all there is to learn, not only the way it helps in the realm of financial advising or tax planning or transfers or any of those things, but I just think it's so interesting how it's playing out, and the potential to enhance all the processes and systems out there. And my husband is a big AI guy, so I kind of come by it naturally. I don't know if I would be so interested on my own, but he knows a lot to be dangerous, and so I kind of live vicariously through those conversations.
I love it. That's great. Question number three, maybe number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by.
So it's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's a line in his book, and he's got the 3 rules. Don't ever criticize, condemn, or complain.
So good. And the next question, how do you best stay ultra healthy and super disciplined?
Oh my gosh. So again, a balance there. But I am very much a person who believes in meditation and moving my body and quiet contemplation, and, making sure that I am always putting myself first. And so whether that's, me doing a little bit of strength training at the gym and just connecting with that in the moment, or playing with my kids, it's always taking some time in a day to make sure that I am operating the healthiest I can be, but also while enjoying a little bit of peach cobbler, which I did yesterday.
Love it. I was off of ice cream for a while. Then my wife bought like this like local the all natural made one. I'm like, this is so good. It's just if it's just a little bit, not much, but I'm like, man, it's kind of been a couple days in a row, right? So it's so good. I feel like it's good for my soul here. Okay, awesome. Very last question, and we'll wrap it up. And it's really the heart of what we're here at Build It to Billions. And so you can give more all the way to help MVPs, the most vulnerable people in this world, right? Also to be able to give more to your family back, right? More to the causes that you believe in, right? So you build it so you can give more of it away, having a stewardship mindset versus ownership. So how do you best keep that mindset, Erika, of having a stewardship over ownership mindset?
I think, this idea of being a servant is just a beautiful place to be, in the sense of, I have gifts that other people don't have, and other people have gifts that I don't have. And how can I bring people into my orbit that have the gifts I would love to contribute to my family, my friends, my work, and how do I do that vice versa? So I'm always trying to make sure that I don't hide my gifts. I share them in a humble way, of course, but making sure that, I'm not slacking in that regard, making sure that I can step in when I think I can be of service.
Dr. Erika Rasure, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. I want to encourage you to keep using those gifts to be a blessing and help others get beyond finance, to get out of debt, to make great decisions with their finance, to be great stewards with the wealth of their family. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, one last time, what's the best place for them to find you?
Best place to find me is at beyondfinance.com. And if you want to connect with me directly, find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Erika. And also want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of the Build It to Billions podcast. We're also streaming on Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and YouTube channels. And we're on this journey with you to scale from millions to billions. So we give more all the way to help MVPs. My name is Brett Source. I want to encourage you to take action today. Share this with someone that can change their life. Dr. Erika just dropped a ton of wisdom, insight, steps to take. And so please share this with someone that it could really help them out as well. If you have a large exit coming up and you want to plan how to build a capital gains tax exit plan without a 1031 exchange for business sales, Bitcoin, real estate, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com and also check out our book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, on Amazon. Appreciate you listening and watching, and we'll talk to everyone again real soon. Bye now.